What is up, guys? Carter Wajenko here from the Tackle Rat. Finally, back here with another episode. Let's get started. Alright, so as you guys can probably tell by the title of the video, today I'm going to be doing an in-depth tackle breakdown of what I caught him on this past week here at Pickwick Lake. Back home now in Illinois. It was my last derby of the season, so pretty sad. Got all the tackle, getting it organized and ready for next season. Always trying to downsize. But anyways, finished 19th at Pickwick. Pretty good finish, I would say. And I was fishing as a co-angler. I had 7 keepers, and I kind of want to break down each fish and kind of what my mindset was for each of those fish and the situation I was put in. So first day of the tournament, we run to this spot, and right away I look at it, how it sets up, very similar to a lot of the stuff that I've seen in lacrosse, and it ended up being very similar in how it fished. So first thing I did in the morning, it was cloudy. We did have a little bit of cold front. I think it dropped a couple degrees, but not enough to get them to, like completely shut down. So the rod I was throwing here, I don't have the bait, broke them off, but Sierra 733, and I was throwing a 3/4 ounce Megabass SV3 spinnerbait. So honestly, the first day I probably broke off like $60 to $75 worth of spinnerbaits. And what I was doing is I was slow reeling right behind the boat. I was slow reeling 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. So we had these rock baits that came down, and then big laydowns, and those fish would be set up on those laydowns and like these rocks and stuff that were kind of farther out. And I kind of noticed those fish were pushed a little bit farther out. They weren't super tied up to that bank. So I was just slow rolling it in that deeper water, like probably 5 to 10 foot range, and kind of just slow reeling it on the bottom, making sure it was ticking the bottom. And that's the reason I lost so many, because they would get hung up in those laydowns and a lot of that stuff. So right away, literally probably first 10 minutes of the day, I caught a keeper smallmouth. It was my smallest fish, and that one, I feel like I was fishing kind of fast on that fish. It was right in the morning, so that fish was probably not sucked to the bottom yet. It was kind of probably feeding. It was on a clay bank actually, and that whole bank was rock. Transitioned to clay and then went back to rock, and that little stretch of clay, that's what I caught that fish off of. And I honestly feel like that was like an undercut bank, and that fish was kind of under that lip. That's what a lot of those fish do in lacrosse, on those clay banks where you got current hitting it. So that's how I caught that first one, and continued to throw that 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, and actually didn't end up catching another keeper. I caught a couple shorts after catching that fish for like the first hour, 2 hours, and I was really throwing it. But then later in the day, I started to focus on these big laydowns. Like I said, they were on these brush piles, and they came way out. So our boat was, he was kind of like paralleling the bank, and his boat was way like almost going over the stuff that I was fishing, and I was catching these fish right after our boat would go over it. So the night before, Brian Partek, who I traveled with, chasing little green fish, check his channel out. I'll link it. But he gave me this jig, and then one other jig, and I honestly don't even know what the name of this jig is. It's just very basic. I believe it's half or 3/4. I don't feel like the size or any of that really mattered. You just needed to have a bait that would get down there to the fish and stay down there in the current. And so like a heavier weight, like a 3/4, 5/8, something like that. I'm pretty sure actually this is 5/8. But I was throwing a jig, and it wasn't this one that I caught him on. I caught him on a PB&J one, which is no longer with us. The hook got trashed. Everything was trashed on that jig because I'd been throwing like the whole day, and That and one other jig were the only jigs I brought. Those ones that Brian gave me the night before. So I was really trying to conserve that jig up until the last minute. But so I was flipping these big laydowns. I was picking them apart with the jig, and it was a PB&J jig, and then I put a little max scent chunk on it on the back. Just not a lot of action. It was a crawfish imitation. I was kind of soaking it on the bottom, and that's how I caught my four other keepers, or three keepers on that one. So way out on these brush piles, I was catching spotted bass, and it's actually not very common to be catching spotted bass there from what I've heard. So that was cool. I had 3 spots doing that. And then the other one was actually a mud line right on the bank, and I flipped to it, and that was my one largemouth. I think that was my biggest fish, and that's how I caught that one on that jig. And then the jig got trashed. I switched over to what I got right here, this sweet beaver, just regular size sweet beaver, and the color is called Flora Bama. So I assumed when I ordered these it meant Florida and Alabama. Pickwick's in Alabama. So that was pretty much my logic behind choosing this color. But honestly, it did look, it's got black and blue on this side, and then like a green pumpkin with like orange and green flake on this side. To me, it looked like a really good way to imitate a bluegill or a crawfish. And if you guys actually looked at my last video before I went to Pickwick, I mentioned this was one of my favorite baits to flip with, just because, like I said, that profile imitates a crawfish and a bluegill great, and also a very popular bait because it does not have appendages. That's something Brian Ladmer got me on when I practiced with him at the Potomac, was throwing baits with no appendages in the fall just gets a little bit tougher and kind of helps with that rate of fall, helps those fish react to it. But I caught one keeper on this. I was throwing it on a 1/2 ounce tungsten and a Gamakatsu flipping hook. And then the rod that I was throwing all this stuff on, Brian actually let me borrow it. So I definitely think I'm going to be picking up one of these rods. I do not have it with me, but it was the Dobbins Champion Extreme 745. What I got here with me is a 735, and that's what I've always used for that kind of stuff, like 1/2 ounce tungsten flipping or like a 5/8 jig. That's what I would use. But that 745 is a little bit heavier, and it's a step up from that Champion XP. So I really like that rod, and I know it's a very popular rod in that lineup. So I'm definitely, I think, gonna be picking one up after using it for that day. So that was a good day. Had 9 something pounds. Next day, I drew a guy who went to the grass. So exact opposite of what we were doing. The air temp significantly dropped, and what my guy was doing on that second day was fishing a big grass flat. So in my experience, grass fish do not like cold fronts. They do not like them. And you could see by the weights, a lot of these guys were fishing grass. The weights got a lot tougher. Still able to get bites. My boater, I think, had 3 keepers, and I had 2, and it was just a grind. So right away in the morning, he had 3 fish. We went like 4 to 5 hours without a bite, and we were just going up and down this little bank for pretty much the whole day. So I was trying all these different things. In the morning, I was throwing a lot of reaction baits. He was catching them on a trap, and I was trying like an A-rig, a spinner bait, a swim jig. Threw a little swim bait on a flashy swimmer head. And then I watched these other guys that were throwing a Carolina rig, a Texas rig, Senko, through the grass and catching them. So what I tied on, and what I caught fish on at the Potomac as well, is just a 6-inch robo worm on a robo worm rebarb hook. So I love this hook. It's a light wire Gamakatsu hook, and I'm a big fan of Gamakatsu. And then it's got a little keeper up there, and it's been a great hook to me. And then I did a little 3/16 ounce weight there, and I was doing a fairly long leader. I would say 12 to 16 inches, because you had this hydrilla, and I wanted to keep this bait above the hydrilla, just so those fish, it would be a little bit easier for them to find it. So pretty much the whole day, I threw this, lost a keeper, I think was a keeper on it in the morning, and then caught a couple shorts, and I kept throwing it the whole day. And then it was like 2 o'clock. I didn't have any fish in the box. And so I looked down in the water, and I'm like, this is a lot clearer than, you know, what I was throwing this color at the Potomac and catching them in super dirty water. And, you know, that water cleans up because it filters through that grass. And so I decided to change it up to a 6-inch roboworm. That's also a 6-inch. This is the fat version, and it's the only green pumpkin drop shot bait that I brought with me. And I just wanted to try something besides that pink morning dawn color. So this is I think it's called Oxblood Light Red Flake, and threw it out there, and I'd say 15-20 minutes went by, and that's how I got my first keeper in the boat. And then after that, we were starting to head back. It was like a 40-minute run back to the ramp, and we started heading back, and we stopped at one spot. This is very similar to what we had been fishing grass. I pitched it out there, wiggled it a couple times, had a bite, set the hook, nothing, let it fall back down, and then another bite, I set the hook, and there was my second keeper. So I was really fighting hard that day to make the top 10, because I knew I was in a good position. I was in 22nd after day one. I knew I only needed, like, you know, 4 or 5 fish just to make it to the top 10. Ended up only taking like 3 keepers probably to make the top 10. So barely missed it there. But actually those 2 fish, I thought they were going to move me down, but I moved up to 19th. So it was a great finish. It was a great tournament. So yeah, that's a little tackle breakdown of my finish at Pickwick. Let me know if you guys want me to do these breakdowns, these tackle breakdowns for these tournaments. Make sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed the video. And thanks again, guys, for watching another episode of the Tackle Rat. And drop a comment down below what you guys want to see. That was my last derby of the season, so going full send on this YouTube channel, and really going to be trying to push as much content as I can out here. So drop a comment down below what you guys want to see, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Tackle Rat. Peace.